are so not on our own today. This is the Munsons, Louisa and Carl Munson on your screen on New Reality TV with The Moment. I'm sure we're not on our own. Are we on our own? Please let us know if you're there and say hi to us if you were. It's what could be called Hump Day. I think we might explore the paradox of how exhausting it is to find peace.
That's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Isn't that what we've experienced in the last few days?
Yeah, I guess we could say that
transformation is tiring.
It is, yeah, absolutely. And we're not don't forget, this is the day of the full moon, and of course, full moons are always a lot more.
Okay, what now?
It's a full moon in Leo today, and people tend to get a lot more tired around the time of the full moon because not everyone relaxes so much. They don't sleep so well.
Our waters are being stirred.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, good morning from New York. Hi, Marie.
Hello.
Good to see you there. How is it in New York right now?
What happened there?
It's Mercury in retrograde as well, probably.
It's not.
Oh, okay. That's why the little message did come on and wasn't interrupted there or disappeared completely.
I think we're feeling
Marie, hi.
Yeah, hello. Right. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and the continuing adventures, of course, today of the Saturn return and Chiron return in one household and partnership. Because I'm not sure we were entirely conclusive, because I dominated the first, as I sometimes do. I apologize for that. I dominated the first discussion about it. You had a little go on our second go, talking about your Chiron return. And you were more general.
Yes, I was a lot more general.
Not very specific and individual. So let's have some space to process that today, if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I noticed that there was this great phrase that came up yesterday. I'm always taking notes.
Yes,
and stuff
you
like
are.
That.
I'll add that to your pile of notes.
Just while we were chatting, you said very off the cuff.
Yes.
We're trying harder and harder to be what we're not.
Oh my word! Don't remind me.
And I really loved that. I just thought, oh my God, that's just kind of
that's part
is
of
that part of
the
human condition right now? Like
everybody
is trying harder and harder and harder to be who they think they are, who they think they might need to be. I wonder what the original human condition is like, and
pristine.
Well, I don't know that.
Pristine, beautiful and peaceful. I mean, we do have that as an archetype to which we aspire, even if it may never be a complete prosaic reality.
Yeah,
I like Russell Brand.
I also recognize that, with the Chiron return that I'm going through, and also the second Saturn return that you are going through. We've got a fly in here.
There's been a resurrection. I thought I'd dispatched that fellow.
He's come back to life.
Maybe. So well, hallelujah. Well done.
There's some kind of theme of regeneration going on today.
Hope for us all.
But anyway, like these two things that we're going through, like the second Saturn return and the Chiron return, they're about eldership, and they're coming into, where we come into our being a bit more, where we are a bit more realistic, possibly find forgiveness for ourselves, that we can be a bit more compassionate and kind. But they are also signaling a time when we are kind of cutting away from the new and the fresh and actually honoring the past a bit more, like recognizing the past. Like at the moment, we're doing a bit of a spring clean and trying to go through all our kids' books and things like that. And I have to say,
that's why we're exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite exhausting, isn't it? Just watching over all of your things,
and these past,
these things
represents the past, doesn't it?
And so our kids are quite blasé about a lot of these books, but some of these books that we've got that we've dragged all the way from the UK to Portugal, and they've been sat in our bookshelf for like 7 years, and they've been maybe looked at once. The thinking there is like, why are we doing this? Like, what part of our character is holding on to the past? And like one of these books in particular was my first dictionary. So it's like a Pictionary. It's like a picture dictionary.
Illustrated dictionary.
Thank you. Yes. An illustrated dictionary. I was showing it to our daughter last night thinking she might like it because it's got loads of beautiful little illustrations. And I could remember holding it and like studying it and really enjoying it. I used to love books so much. And my daughter was like, yeah.
Well,
very blasé about
it. She loves holding and studying her medium of discovery.
Yes, and it's not books, is it?
No, it's not.
And so I'm, in thinking, I wonder what it is to be a human without this kind of human condition. Like, can we ever get rid of this? What is it, like an anxiety or a feeling of, there is something, I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it. And maybe it's just me, but I don't think it is, because most people I talk to know what I'm talking about. I think the Portuguese have a word, don't they, for saudade, which is like a sort of home.
But it's a kind of homesickness. They say there's no direct translation, but it's missing something.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something like that going on.
And by definition, you can't miss the future, can you? You can only miss the past.
Or our ideas about what the past represents.
Exactly, your ideas. It's your ideas that do the damage, is it not?
So yeah, I'm full of curiosity at the moment, wondering, like, what is the secret to happiness?
Oh my word! Okay, wow. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to take it
big
to
guns.
Get the big guns out. Like, what is the secret to happiness?
Yeah.
How can we appreciate the simple moments, even if actually what's going on is some kind of like awful churning in our stomach, in our bellies, in our bodies?
Okay, so let's to be more specific then. Do you feel like you've got an awful churning going on, and is that part of your Chiron return symptoms? If you like?
Actually, I think the Chiron return. And just to explain, if you're listening in for the first time, you've not heard me talk about the Chiron return before. The Chiron return is something we go through when we're about 49 to 51. And it kind of brings us back to if there is an original wound that we experience, like the wound that you can't quite heal, or you can't quite put your finger on. Like for some people, it might be abandonment. I'm not trying to wake you up by the day. So like, if you're listening, I know Maria's listening in from New York. Like the start of her day, probably doesn't want to hear me talk about wounds, but that sense, that sense of like what is it that appears to prevent us from just letting go and enjoying ourselves and getting on with life and just being
now you're
straightforward.
Talking. I know.
Go on.
Well, it's the thing that's going, I know, isn't it? Rather than just being in the moment, it wants to lurch forward and answer your question. It's an expression of that. Well, before I say more, may I? Yeah. And as I was making a cup of tea earlier on for us to enjoy while we sat here having a moment, which is what this show is, the moment with the Munsons on New Reality TV. And by the way, let us know what you think about New Reality TV and what other shows you're watching. Give us a bit of feedback about the channel in general as well. I've a lot of this for me was about having a little bit of a pause, and there's a real paradox, isn't there, in the inquiry after peace and fulfillment and joy, and how that can make you very active and inquisitive and almost stressed in the pursuit. This is the great paradox, isn't it, of the spiritual path? Is like there is no path really. It seems to be about a pursuit, but if you're pursuing it, there's a level of activity in that which isn't entirely appropriate. And I was talking to Emma.
That activity isn't particularly peaceful either, is it?
No, exactly. And
this constant striving.
In a conversation I had with Mama Bear McGowan, who talks a lot about grief yesterday, and she was on my Good Morning Portugal show yesterday, and she was talking about, well, let's just have a moment show. I was like, hold on a minute, this is the wrong show. But anyway, she took us into a moment where she was saying, sometimes in the pursuit of the now and the moment, we come right out of the moment and the now. There's an incredible irony and paradox in that, isn't there? So can we
let's do it.
Can we sort of feel that? And we don't, this for me, you know me, I'm very down to earth and pragmatic about what might be called meditation or mindfulness. We don't need to, do a big breath, do a long breath, stick your tongue out and, do things. It's more about, I suppose, essentially about relaxing oneself. Hey, Tito, up early again in Texas, I think, maybe. Anyway, nice to see you. Thank you for being here. But it's more about opening up the awareness and stopping first and foremost. Not necessarily the trappings, and they're called trappings for a reason, aren't they? It's not about the posture. It's not about the ritual. It's about now. I've got my hands on a warm cup, so I can just allow my awareness to be. Why are you laughing?
That just
as it tips into my lap. Oh, okay.
It just sounds
were
like
you being
slightly...
smutty? My hands on a warm cup.
It just sounds slightly rude.
Well, there's a great example of how the mind keeps coming in, doesn't it? Carl's talking about mindfulness and being in the senses and being in the moment.
And I'm looking for.
And you've riffed away using the mind's associative powers. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it just goes to show you what you're dealing with. And I'm the same. If you'd said that, I'd have probably been thinking,
exactly. We're childish.
And when is she going to say Uranus next? And this is what happens. This is what happens. And we have this constant option, don't we, to okay, I see that. I see how my mind wants to do that. And I'm not going to go there right now. I'm not going to turn connecting with the moment into a hobby and a pursuit and a battle even, or a frustration. I'm just going to be aware of whatever's going on in this moment right now. And that's, in many ways, to me, that's what this show is. It's an opportunity to do that, is to come as much as you possibly can in the way that you know how, and in the way that a lot of our guests teach us and show us and demonstrate to us, to see how much you can be present as an invitation, as an opportunity. And that's quite a rare thing, I think, in our world.
Yeah, I have to say.
And I'm doing it now.
I got quite a release from Monday's show when we were talking to Sadhu Dar. And yeah, I was like, some old stuff came up for sure. And I was, you might have seen, I was sort of like crying. And then once we ended the live stream, that was it. I was in like floods of tears again. And I ended up going for a lovely walk. That's really what I wanted to do the most. And we're really lucky that we live so close to the Atlantic Ocean. So I walked down to the ocean, took my socks off, sat down. I mean, it was pretty cold. And I ended up laying down. So I was like watching, the ocean for quite a while. But what I really got the sense of, and, there's lots of people that might talk about the science of grounding. But I got really the sense of like Mother Earth, and I think of the water as mother, like the etymology of la mer and la bord de la mer, like the idea, like mer is like mum.
You're speaking to me like a French girl.
And
I draw you after
like we've got lots of Marias and Maries here in Portugal where we live.
Yes.
In fact, this whole coastline is full of, even in Marie Claude, for instance, in France.
Yes.
Of course, like France, Spain, and Portugal all have a bit of skin in the game on the Atlantic Ocean, don't they? They all have that sort of edge. And and of course Mary as well. The etymology of those names all come from the sea, and so I had this really strong sense of the mum, the mother, and in the end I just kind of lay down on the beach, and I really just felt a sense of
relief.
Real relief.
Give it up. Now, you mentioned old stuff came up. Now that's
it was old stuff to do with motherhood as well.
Well, that's interesting. Now that's an interesting, to me anyway. It's not a trope, is it? But a phrase in the work of transformation and healing. Old stuff coming up. What do you mean by that? How is that for you?
Okay.
Tell us more about that process.
Well, I think, and I don't think I'm alone with this. I think a lot of, and I observe this in a lot of people, and also in plants, because I love plants so much. What I observe is that when things are young and youthful, they move around a lot, and they're bouncy and flexible and so on and so forth. And as we get older and plants get older, they solidify, they kind of get calcified, they dry up, and they're rigid. And what occurred to me is, I think kids are quite good at shaking off. See, this thing with Sadhu Dar on Monday had come after a conversation on Saturday or Sunday where I was talking to some friends about, when I was living in Bali, I met these people that looked really sparkling and really vital, like full of vitality. And I got chatting to them because they were almost like the superior race. I don't know where they came from. Like they almost
beings
looked like
light.
They just look like beings of light. And they also look like a Benetton advert.
Oh wow!
Because they were like beings of light,
so
of all different colours and shapes. Well, I don't know who they are now, but
they'll all be 15 years older.
Hopefully they're still sparkly. But anyway, I got chatting to them in some sort of vegan cafe or some sort, obviously what we were doing in Bali at that time. And I was chatting to them, and they'd been to a retreat. And in fact, they were in an ongoing retreat with at an ashram where they were learning about the benefits of shaking. And it occurred to me, kids, because we got 3 small ones, in particular one that's very sort of like jumpy, and they shake themselves.
Active, right?
They're active. And so something comes for them, it upsets them. And if we're really lucky, they really feel it. And they, you see their color flush, they might sweat, they might scream, shout, cry, you know, and they might shake. I remember as a child, I used to shake quite a lot, and I used to do a lot of stretching exercises. Felt a lot of relief from that. Animals, something happens.
You mean that in a positive way, though, right?
Yeah,
The shakes. I mean, just the phrase "the shakes" is seen as quite a negative thing. But you used to just move yourself.
Yeah, and you know, after a while, you get told by your parents at school, sit still.
Yes.
Don't you? What are you doing? Like you're growing up. Grow up. Like, sit still and stuff. You know, animals, like we've got a dog, you know, you shout at him, he shakes. And then afterwards he kind of shakes it off and walks off. And so I remembered these shakers, these guys who were shaking, not like actually the religious group shakers, but they were, for want of a better word, I think they were shaking for about a month. And they were in this huge ashram, and every day I think they might have discussed a few things. Then they would get up and they would routinely shake their body out. And I think there were bins by the side for them to vomit in, because it brought up a lot of stuff. And so
this is the old stuff now that you're talking
about.
Right.
So what I observe is, I think there comes a time when possibly something comes up and we are rigid in the pain of it, or we're numb. We experience a numbness, like a freeze, where something happens and we don't shake. I think the natural way of being is probably to shake, but it might be that there's a time when we freeze and possibly try to look smaller than we actually are and try not to move. And I realized that there have been some times when I've not known how to respond to really scary, upsetting things, like deeply upsetting things. And I've frozen and not done anything with it. I've just kind of sat with it, and I've kind of felt cold with it. And I've been afraid to let my feelings out, maybe because I was afraid of shame, blame, guilt, anger, or being in an environment that didn't allow me to do that.
Yeah.
And so with Sadhu Dar and the exercise that he was doing on Monday, he was asking us with this breathing practice to connect into something like our most beautiful moment. And I remembered cuddling my 1-day-old baby, and she'd come around after a couple of miscarriages. I was pregnant, miscarried at 3 months, pregnant again, miscarried, then pregnant straight after. So it felt from start to finish that I was pregnant for about 15 or 16 months. And so there's this moment of deep joy, lying back with my daughter, and we had sun streaming in through the windows, our chests connecting, you know, as we would. And that sense of relief, I felt like I was having an out of body experience. I felt like I was floating out of my body, and it was beautiful. And that's the state that Sadhu Dar's beautiful technique took me to. And of course, you know, with that came that feeling of shock, you know, that I didn't realize that the relief was there because of the trauma that happened before.
Yes.
And I'd been too afraid to do anything about it, didn't know how to move with it. And so, walking, you know, I've been doing quite a lot of walking since. I've been shaking every day, like making sure I shake every day.
Yeah.
But I realized that I've been rigid. And I think that possibly what happens with grown-ups and also elderly people is they lose their energy, so they can't shake.
Yeah, right.
They lose their appetite for things. But I think the more we sit still and the more we don't react to things, most likely the more things weigh us down.
Yes,
and then it almost becomes impossible.
It's called atrophy, is it not?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I think probably the antidote for all of this is to keep moving. And of course, that's not just physically, but emotionally, like keep moving, keep whatever's going, flowing. Well, that's good. Going, flowing, keep it moving until it can transform.
Yeah. I think in a very marvelous way, you've brought together the themes of our discussion today. That is the to answer the question, which I think there was a question about the nature of happiness.
Yeah.
It is to be free of that which is allowing vitality and happiness. You know, there's no better happiness than what you described of being free and relieved.
Yeah.
And now I think, you know, obviously in our consumer society, we would have it that things bring happiness, and they do, obviously, for a
Temporarily,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But in terms of lasting, sustainable, fulfilling happiness, it is about the absence of that which ails us, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then what you were talking about, or what I understood anyway from what you were talking about, is as a childhood habit. And this is, in my own experience, in terms of those responses that we're said to have as humans of fight, flight, and freeze.
Yeah.
Fighting back is not always a great strategy when you're a child.
No. That fly really wants to talk to me.
Wants to be friends. Fighting, not so great. Running, you can do, can't you? But less so. I think running away is something kids have at their disposal, isn't it? And I did that a few times as a kid. It didn't go down very well.
Yeah.
Didn't go down very well.
I was caught by a neighbour walking
Not
miles away from home.
Oh, I did
straight
walk
back.
miles away from home. Yeah, and but also just like sort of I remember that as a sort of childhood and teenager habit. I've got to get out of here. So flight, but freeze, I think, is the most common of childhood processes, isn't it? In terms of dealing with the inevitable conflict of childhood, and challenge of childhood, and in the absence or the forgetting of shaking and letting things go and running around in the playground and all that sort of stuff, that perhaps is the old stuff you're talking about. It lives on, doesn't it? It becomes frozen. We're like a deep freeze of traumatic responses, aren't we? And again, that's just what might be described as science or physiology. It's just a thing, isn't it? It is just what happens. I'm not saying
things cool down, don't they?
Yes, they do. They freeze, in that sense. They cool down. Everything
and that is what
down.
happens as we get older.
Yes,
isn't
it's
it?
the
Like
law of
our bodies,
thermodynamics. Absolutely, aren't we brilliant? A lot of old stuff is coming, especially mother stuff. So Marie, I think, is on this wavelength.
And you've got the name of the mother in your name.
How about the
Funnily
Marie?
enough,
Yes.
And Minio. I love that. Our daughter is called Minnie, which is like it originates from Mary.
Yes. Oh, well, look, Shake It Off. Hi, guys. Karen likes to use Taylor Swift's Shake It Off song, which Bob's niece used on her kids before bedtime to clear things up.
Oh, what a great idea.
What a great idea. Yes. However you feel about Taylor Swift, from her musical canon there, Shaking It Off is a great idea, isn't it? And yes, we can go inside over and over again. And keep shaking, keep letting go of things. And I think it's really healthy to see it as an interactive and creative process, because it did occur to me in these last couple of days that the constant pursuit, again, like looking for the moment and looking for joy, is in its own way. We can see the futility and dysfunction of that.
Yeah.
Looking for pain, looking for old stuff also has a kind of limit, doesn't it? Or usefulness. And what we seem to be hearing from a lot of our guests, and a lot of what we're hearing and realizing ourselves, is cultivating a healthy awareness of it, such that it might be seen and released, seen and released, seen and released, rather like, where are you? I'm coming to get you, and I'll get you out of my body with some damn good shaking.
What happens for me? I love what you said there, but what happens for me is I don't really release anything until I get bored of myself with it.
Yeah.
And once I get bored of myself with it, that's it. It's gone. It's done.
Right.
So sometimes I have to I have to amp it up a little bit, ramp it up, and until I get so sick of myself, and then it's like, okay.
Well, you made a good reference to
done.
the animal kingdom, and I think that is what happens in the animal kingdom, isn't it? The shaking of animals is seen by natural historians. Did you want to share a publication here? Were you?
Well, yeah. What occurred to me, I received this book yesterday by Frida. It's beautiful, isn't it? Yes. It looks absolutely lovely. Frida, if you're watching, thank you so much for this. So somebody who watches my Feel Good Astrology channel, we've been in communication, and she's experienced a lot of grief. I won't share her story right now because she's going to come on the show. But this is her book about grief. And one of the things that I noticed about it, I'm not sure if the illustration is like roots, like family roots seen from the bottom up. But to me, it also looks like something is shattered.
And an overlay of darkness.
Like a shattering, sort of like breaking, but then beyond it are these lovely,
the color
beautiful
and the light
flowers.
Returning,
and so, I haven't started reading it, although I do know some of Frida's story, and we've spoken before. But I realised that the rigidity of the black shape It's almost like we have these shapes around us, or these forms, and they might be thought forms that we're creating around us of pain, or where things have just got solidified.
Yes. Well, have you seen petrified roots of trees?
No.
They are the analogy almost of grief, solid grief. There is in Sheffield in the UK where I used to live. I remember in the Botanical Gardens, they had it's not an exhibit exactly, but there were beautiful living trees and flowers, and then there was this petrified tree root, which must be prehistoric and solid. It's like a stone. It's a fossilized tree, if you like. And that's a beautiful analogy for us, and leans into that cover there, doesn't it? Is that, and interesting, the word grief. I think grief now, like embodiment, meditation, mindfulness, all of these words eventually ruin something that's beautiful, or they can do, because all the focus goes on the word and the judgment and the classification. And I think we are talking about grief, aren't we, in the broadest sense of like holding on to things that no longer serve us, whether they be ideas, meanings, unprocessed events, things not going the way we wanted them to. If that lives on, it will do something to us that might be less than healthy or advantageous. And it has to take, like we were saying yesterday, it has to take place in its own time as well, doesn't it? You can't just be free of it. But if you ignore it altogether, it will stay present, perhaps in a less than helpful way in our lives. That's what I'm beginning to realize.
Yeah, I wonder if we've got a TCM expert nearby.
Right.
Minnie's your nickname. That's lovely.
Yeah. I have some beautiful petrified wood as well. So Deb knows what I'm talking about.
I've got a crystal of petrified wood.
Right. Okay. And I'm not sniggering about that. Okay. We don't need to do this. We don't need to look for anything to heal anymore. Then the energies on the planet are helping us to have whatever is ready to come up on its own. Yeah. Okay. Awareness is all that's required, and allowing it. Thank you, Bob, for putting it so much more simply than I was trying to do there. And Bob, in terms of this question that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen, what are the signals to you that we are in a period of change and transformation and a new reality?
For another show, because
maybe
look at
Friday.
the time.
Maybe Friday.
We'll continue this on Friday.
Is that a symptom of the new reality, though, that you don't have to go looking for it? It's coming up for us to see and be present to, and to transform, perhaps.
I love that. Yeah. I'm going to check out, in the meantime, the element of wood in TCM. I have a feeling it's connected to the lungs, which is connected to grief.
I thought it was metal. But anyway,
I don't know. Let's find out. Let's find out what's connected to the lungs.
The big challenge and wager of the day: is it wood or is it metal?
It's probably neither.
We might find out.
I need to speak to a TCM expert as soon as possible.
Traditional Chinese medicine.
And maybe we could talk about
quick mention of what you're doing tonight, because that could be useful.
Yes, tonight I'm going to be doing an Ask Louisa. It's actually going to be the last one of this series. I don't know when my next series will start, but so if you have a question that you'd like me to have a look at, please do enter. You'll need to fill out that form within the next within the next 6 hours to be considered. Okay.
Well, it doesn't take that long though, does it?
No, it takes less than a minute.
Right. It's not a bit of government paperwork.
No.
Simple.
It doesn't need to be rubber stamped or anything.
Oh, look at this. All right. Anything else you want to say? What time are you on air? This is on New Reality TV, by the way.
It's on newrealitytv.com. And you can also see it if you want to chat in the chat room on my on my YouTube channel, Feel Good Astrology. It's the full moon, so I'm imagining that full moony stuff's going to come up. So there you go.
Final message, as Deb says, and thank you for joining us, Marie. Nice to see you here. I think for the first time.
Yeah,
it is coming up, Bob. Let's breathe it out. So maybe remember, take that into your day with you. Anything that comes
tomorrow,
up, breathe it out. We've got to go.
Oh.
Who have we got?
We've got a medium on tomorrow.